In the last video, we blamed your slowed down metabolism as to why you cannot lose weight. And today we have a brand new excuse, and that is the stress. The chances are, if you're a young adult in today's age, you're no stranger to feeling stressed. According to a recent report in the UK involving over 4,000 participants, above 90% of the young adults that were interviewed reported feeling stressed to the point where they felt they were unable to cope at least once in the past year. Around half of them reported having worse eating habits, as to eating more unhealthily or eating more in general as a response to this excessive stress. This is why today we're going to cover everything about stress and eating behaviors, starting off with how does cortisol specifically affect your physiology, the biochemistry in your body, moving on to how does excessive stress affect your eating behaviors, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some nutrients that are available in stress management supplements, but also in our food, so you don't have to break your bank. And finally, we're going to finish off with some strategies that might be more effective to manage your stress, that are also more accessible, and you can do them today. I am also not a stranger to feeling stressed. Maybe you're also a part of the team that sleeps with one of those boxer protection thingies, but the only thing that it's protecting me from is myself. Anyways, enough rambling, let's get into the video. Starting off with the biochemistry, with the physiology of stress. You're probably aware that cortisol is our stress hormone, and it is needed in adequate concentrations for a variety of things. It is the hormone that our body releases when we wake up in the morning to keep us awake. It is the hormone that also helps us have a drive to achieve things. To a point, it is also involved in the anti-inflammatory process in our body. So having some cortisol is good. However, chronic stress results in a dysregulation of our entire hormonal balance. When we're under some chronic or some acute stress, our body is trying its best to mobilize as much energy as possible. The glucose that is circulating in your blood, it is even increased because there is also some extra glucose that is being mobilized from the storages that you have in your muscles in the form of glycogen. Something similar happens also to the fatty acids in your body, the so-called lipolysis, and all of these things are the reason why excessive cortisol levels have been linked to insulin sensitivity, diabetes, and also higher levels of blood lipids, so fats in the blood. In addition to all of that, high levels of cortisol can also lead to a dysregulation of your bone homeostasis, so it can lead to impaired bone density. There is a clinical hypercortisolism, so excessive production of cortisol by one's body. It is called Cushing's syndrome, and this is also, I believe, where the entire terms of moon phase and also cortisol belly come from. Technically, those are symptoms of Cushing's syndrome, but this is a clinical diagnosis, and unless your adrenal glands produce excessive amounts of cortisol, then you do not have cortisol belly, and you also do not have cortisol face. Some other symptoms involve increased susceptibility to bruising and also redness in the face, a lot of other things, but again, this is a clinical condition. What could be leading to you feeling more generally bigger or bloated is the fact that high levels of cortisol are also linked to higher water retention and sodium retention, which leads to you being more bloated. Also, I think I mentioned this in the previous video on metabolism, high cortisol is also related to you preserving more of your fat mass, so your body holds on to fat more efficiently. There is also the so-called cortisol to testosterone ratio, which is examined in athletes because it could be an indicator of them overtraining. Excessive cortisol production is linked to a decrease in the production of testosterone, so then their ability to build muscle is being very negatively impacted. Now that we've talked about the physiology of cortisol, let's talk about how excessive stress can impact our eating behaviors. People undergoing chronic stress, according to some research, most of the time experience some change in their eating behaviors. 40% report to be eating more, 40% report to be eating less than normal, and a very low 20% do not report any change in their eating behaviors. These changes could also be linked to the type of stressor. If it's a chronic stressor, they might be eating less than normal. If it's an acute stressor, they might have the drive to eat more. This kind of negative effect is experienced more often in individuals that are overweight, unfortunately, which then proceeds to worsen the situation, obviously. These type of behaviors are also very prominent in women, especially. Women seem to be more often using food to deal with stress compared to men. One of the possible reasons behind this is an overactivation of your reward systems. I don't think that you're a stranger to this concept. Specific foods, especially high-fat, high-sugar foods, seem to be exploiting similar, not the same, but similar pathways in the brain as also addictive substances do. And when you're under chronic stress over a very long period of time, even after that stressor disappears, your brain might still be experiencing that negative influence. Some papers say that the HPA axis, these are all of the organs that are involved in producing cortisol. It is generally produced from your adrenal glands, but there is also other things involved like the brain. This HPA axis could then be remaining dysregulated after the disappearance of the chronic stressor. And you could also be releasing less dopamine as a response to certain things compared to what a healthy person would release. All of these things would then lead to you consuming generally more of these highly attractive foods. There have been a lot of studies on rats most of the time. Unfortunately, they have not changed this concept until now. These studies on rats have examined their behavior when they're put under stress and when they are not being stressed, and the stressed groups always go to the more high sugar foods that they're being offered, while the unstressed rats remain eating chow. Same goes for other studies. There was one study that examined the eating behaviors of rats that were separated from their mothers, which induced a lot of stress in them, and they exhibited much higher consumption of such high sugar foods. And in some of these studies, the animals even became to develop copious consumption patterns. So they became somewhat addicted, let's say, to these foods and were exhibiting withdrawal behaviors. At the same time, when one is being chronically stressed, the brain supposedly also has a lower ability to exert control. So not only do you have a higher drive to consume these foods, but at the same time your mental resources are somehow depleted and your brain cannot cope with right now controlling your behavior and making you not go and eat those foods. So basically everything is playing against you when you're under chronic stress. The consumption of these foods also seemed to lower the cortisol levels in rats in the short term. I mean, after they ate some of these highly palatable foods, then their cortisol levels were decreasing. Humans do exhibit similar patterns when they are being confronted with similar situations. Emotional eating is the type of behavior when one uses food as their comfort, let's say, under times of chronic stress. This, if it continues for a longer period of time, can develop, unfortunately, into a disorder such as binge eating. However, emotional eating is not the only one pattern that is problematic when talking about stress and eating behaviors. Restraint eating seems to have a very negative connection to stress. Generally, being restrictive about what you eat has been linked to a stress response in you. You are experiencing some cognitive restraint and that puts you under pressure. If you combine general restrictive eating with a very highly stressful period in your life, then you are not able to control yourself to the extent that a person that is more flexible about their diet would do. There are some hypotheses that your cognitive resources are being depleted by the chronic stress, and at that point you do not have anything left to fight the drive to eat. I believe this is also why researchers have found that people who are very very rigid about their food rules, and people who are more flexible with their diets do not eat that much differently in terms of calories, although the one group is very restrictive and, very obsessive about their eating. At the same time, such restrictive eaters have been found to overeat much more in times of stress compared to people who are more flexible in their diets. Restrictive eating and stress are not very compatible. They're not compatible at all. This is why you should allow yourself some room for flexibility, even if you want to stick to your regime when you are under very stressful conditions. Now let's move on to how can you manage stress when using nutrition, or here we're starting off with things that are very often being put in supplements. You know that I'm mostly against taking extra supplements. There are only few ones that I would support some groups of people taking, but I believe that through a balanced diet you can really get most of the nutrients that your body requires. We're starting off with magnesium, and this is one that has been used for so many things recently. Magnesium is proving to solve all of your problems. It is going to improve your sleep, it is going to help with your training, magnesium is going to pay your bills. There are so many things that magnesium is promising to do for you. When talking about stress, apparently this is a conversation that has been going on for quite a while, so since the 1990s, and magnesium and stress seem to be in this vicious cycle. Magnesium seems to be in higher demand when one is under chronic stress conditions, and if you have a magnesium deficiency, your body is less capable to cope with the cortisol release. This is why managing your magnesium levels is important, but you can also do that through your diet. If you are mindful about which foods do you get when you go to the grocery store. Here is a list of foods that can give you a substantial amount of magnesium. We're talking dark chocolate, pumpkin seeds, avocados even. It is pretty large list, and I suppose that you're going to like at least one of these foods. On the topic of omega-3s and vitamin E, they're also often advertised to help with stress levels. The data here is not as approving in all cases, it's kind of mixed, but there are some studies that support omega-3s and their positive connection to managing cortisol levels. Omega-3s are known to everyone to be available in fish and seafood. Fatty fish contains more omega-3s. Of course, if you do not like that, there is also the option to consume more flaxseed. This is probably like the one food that actually contains omega-3 fatty acids that is not of animal origin. For vitamin E, practically every plant fat contains some vitamin E. Nuts and seeds, even seed oils if you may, avocados as well, they all contain vitamin E. It is not a very common deficiency. Tea seems to be also another strategy that could help with you relaxing and reducing your stress levels, green tea specifically. And there was this paper on decaffeinated green tea, I'm going to explain right now why, that put the participants in a 6-week intervention of them consuming 6 cups of green tea per day. That's a bit extra if you ask me, but if you like green tea, you could try and go for it, I guess. And decaffeinated is important since caffeine has been linked to a cortisol release. This is nothing new. You know how everyone says, do not drink your coffee first thing in the morning before having breakfast. And caffeine is the one component that is responsible for the cortisol release when talking also about coffee. There was this paper investigating the impact of coffee, normal coffee, and decaf on cortisol and also a bunch of other things, and it found that the decaf did not induce a cortisol release. There is also this specific amino acids, gamma aminobutyric amino acid, or GABA for short, that has been linked to decrease cortisol levels. And these amino acids can be influenced in a variety of ways. Through the consumption of B vitamins, so I'm talking B3, B12, and also folic acid, this is technically B9, the expression of the receptors, the entire biochemistry of GABA is somehow enhanced, and therefore it has a greater influence on the decrease of production of cortisol. B vitamins are generally not something that most people lack unless you have a very specific way of eating. B12 might be the main one that you need to worry about if you're vegetarian or vegan, because it is contained exclusively in animal products. Fish dairy, eggs, meat, all of that. And if you're vegetarian or vegan especially, you might consider supplementing B12. On the rest of the B vitamins, B3 is available practically everywhere, so you do not need to worry about that. And for B9 or folic acid, it is contained in some specific foods again, so you have to be a bit mindful. It is also very important for fertility. Folic acid can be found in adequate concentrations in lentils, also in beets, in spinach to some extent, in citrus fruits in quite low concentrations, but still. GABA in its original form is contained also in some foods such as fermented milk products and also some other specific food products such as sprouts from beans and brown rice. These are kind of, exclusive. Even just supplying the efficient amount of B vitamins is going to do the job. You need them anyways. And a lot of stress management supplements. I have one in my pantry. It's been there for years. Maybe I should throw it away. It contains mostly B vitamins. It's nothing that crazy. On the topic of the other things you see on the graph, taurine and lithium. Taurine is available also as a supplement. I saw it in them the other day, and it is an amino acid, a conditionally essential amino acid, so your body can generally produce it just in times of very excessive stress or serious illness. You need to be eating it with your food, but it's available in some low concentrations in fish, meat, dairy products, all of that stuff. About lithium, it is a trace element. I'm not talking about your phone battery, I'm talking about your food right now. Lithium is available in the microgram concentration in some foods. It is used generally in higher concentrations to treat psychiatric disorders. And also I found in this article, it was not a scientific article, it was just an article that said it is also used to treat dementia. I don't think that supplying taurine or lithium is going to make a huge difference. I think that just you getting a sufficient amount of B vitamins and doing some other things that I'm about to say right now is going to be more efficient in this case. Generally, having too much of B vitamins is pointless because they're water soluble. If you supplement them, you're going to pee them out. Please don't do it. It's just a waste of money. Now, let's talk about some free ways to lower your cortisol levels. There is a study on every single very basic stress lowering practice that you could think of. They are all legit. There was a paper on breath work. There was a paper on people doing a single yoga session. I'm talking one yoga session. There was another study about music interventions. This one was interesting. It was talking about how people that listened to instrumental music experienced greater benefits, and also generally music with a lower tempo. Higher tempo music and music with lyrics is not that good for lowering stress apparently, unless you relate to the lyrics or something, because the lyrics seem to be distracting. There was even a paper on journaling, but you have to journal about the stressor and the thing that is bothering you. Otherwise, journaling about neutral topics did not seem to do the trick. And also the final boss, meditation. Meditation practices have been proven time and time again to improve one's mental state when it comes to stress. Also, getting off your phone, social media consumption and stress are two things that have been linked even scientifically now. We're talking about approval anxiety, we're talking about FOMO, we're talking about even the pressure to be available all of the time, the overload with misinformation, fake news. Just decrease your screen time. Unless I post a video, then you need to come and watch it. Being with loved ones, your support system, family, friends, therapist even if you feel like you need one. These are all things that can help with managing your stress levels if you cannot remove the initial chronic stressor right now. Let's say it's your job and you cannot afford to quit right now. Let's say it's university and you have one semester till you finish the degree. You cannot speed this process up. All of these simple strategies can help you get through that period of time, and you do not need to take a supplement to help you with that. Finally, as a comic relief. Here's a paper that says that romantic embraces, so embraces from your partner, seem to be helping with a lowered stress response in women but not in men. So you do not have to hug your boyfriend anymore. It apparently helps with nothing. I hope that you learned something new today and that this was useful for you to understand how stress negatively impacts both your body and your mind, and that you do not need some type of magic solution to this. The simplest solutions can help with managing your stress levels. Let me know down in the comments below if you have an idea about a video in the next week. If you enjoyed the content, do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I recently got to almost 2,000 subscribers, which is insane, and I want to thank everyone that is watching this channel. I hope that I am really helping you with something with the type of content I'm putting out there. Anyways, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.